Christian doctrines are remarkably irrelevant for real life. They are also typically baseless, biblically speaking. Those are the kind where a biblical interpreter, a quality interpreter, will look at them and say, I don't even recognize this stuff as coming from the Bible in any shape or form. The people most insistent on them are also the ones who are the worst interpreters of the Bible, typically. And then thirdly, and this is what you have to hope for as a best case scenario, they're utterly irrelevant, because at least that means they're not doing any damage anywhere. But then there are all these other doctrines that are actually really traumatizing and harmful. I have noticed, by the way, lately that those particular doctrines serve like a surrogate excuse for all kinds of vengefulness in politics and even on the streets of our cities. And no, I don't mean the population, I mean the federal government. Under traumatizing, I would put physical suffering in a physical hell in eternity, that kind of stuff, which is, again, biblically baseless, and it is harmful. It is not irrelevant in the sense that it does actually cause a lot of damage. But I want to focus on one that is also extremely harmful and that is currently the most important one, sadly, which is Christian nationalism. It's extremely widespread in this country. It's almost like a lot of Christians don't have the historical understanding or the critical thinking ability to realize what they're doing. It is also extremely immoral. So yesterday I did a video on this and you can watch it, but probably it never showed up in your stream. It actually did well for an hour, and after that it went nowhere. It stopped being distributed. It's funny how that works, isn't it? I would invite you to go back and watch that. In that video, I point out that this experience, No More Idolatry, that I just mentioned, is focused around certain content that we absolutely need to make sense of these things. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to explain the content to you because I would like you to sign up for this if you think it is relevant or even urgent. I would hope that you agree that this is urgent because Christian nationalism is so utterly incompatible with Jesus of Nazareth. But how do you think through these issues? That's what I want to help you with. That is my wheelhouse. So please watch the next few minutes and then go to yesterday's video, watch that and sign up for the course. We have to start making a difference. Christian voices are almost nowhere to be heard in this, and that's an atrocity in itself. I'm guessing you are here because you heard me say on social media that I'm putting together this community experience, including a course that helps us get to the bottom of this nasty thing called Christian nationalism. How do we understand it? How do we go about understanding it? So you're wondering, what's the content going to be? Well, we'll take 4 main angles on this. One has to do with history. We've got to know where's this stuff coming from. And there are 2 units under that. The first one is a historical overview from C1 to C21, 1st century to 21st. We start with Judas Iscariot in the New Testament, and we go all the way up to MAGA evangelicalism today. The second one is an international look at who in what culture represents this kind of thinking. Well, all you need to do is look at Trump's buddies. You've got Orban in Hungary, you've got Putin in Russia, and you've got various characters in South America like Bolsonaro. We're going to look at them and we're going to see some patterns that are really helpful to make sense of what's happening here. But that whole historical section will not take an awful lot of time. It's just like an introduction. The second section we're going to spend a little more time on. I'm going to call it thought. There are 4 units under that. The first one is imperialism as so-called liberty. You know, all this thinking that we're going to liberate Venezuela and all that stuff. That is very reminiscent of the Crusades and the Spanish Inquisition in the Middle Ages and some of the arguments there. We got to look at that. The second one under thought is identity politics and the declared enemy. This kind of fundamentalist cultish thing, like MAGA evangelicalism, relies on identity politics and a declared enemy. Often it's simply called socialism, or is it the Soviet Union? Is it atheism? Soviet Union, of course, that was in the old days before Trump got buddies with Putin. Number 3 under thought, the legal framework, the Constitution versus Trump, and it's very much a versus because he doesn't give a rip about it. There's the so-called Christian Amendment in the American history. There are debates, especially in the South, about the 10 Commandments. We have to look at that. There's Jerry Falwell, that evangelical nutcase that trotted out the path for some of the worst misuses of the Bible. The 4th element under thought is number 6 overall, the church and state dilemma. It is so intriguing to me that everyone talks about the church. Everyone assumes that the church, singular, is the way to go, when actually the New Testament isn't interested in that at all. It is interested in many communal churches in actual neighborhoods, in people's houses, and this question of church and state doesn't even arise then. We have to look at that. We have to ask, why is that so? And why is that being so badly ignored by everyone? You have to understand the church and state question only makes sense if you think of church as an institution, and that's already a huge mistake. Then we have the third main angle on this, which is sociology. It may be a scary word, it's not scary. We'll make it relevant and understandable. First of all, there are 2 units under that. The first one is the question, is it a cult? Is MAGA a cult? And the answer is going to be yes. But we need to know why it makes sense to think so. So we'll look at that. That's the 7th unit overall. And then the other one under sociology is going to be number 8, culture and morality. Immigrations, deportations, ICE. We got to look at contemporary situations, and we have to ask ourselves, how is it that MAGA evangelicals and charismatics tend to defend this kind of thing? Some of that is actually psychological. We'll go into that. That will also explain why we cannot persuade any of these people. They're not interested in reason. They're not interested in the evidence. So what are we supposed to do about it with our friends and our family? How are we supposed to talk to them about any of this? We'll spend community time discussing all that. And then finally, the main angle in all this is Bible. First, we have unit number 9, Old Testament calling, the role of Israel. So much misunderstanding around that. So much misuse of the role of Israel. So much so that today the MAGA movement still thinks that America is the friend of God because America is the friend of Israel, no matter what Israel does. It is awful. And it's based in a horrible misreading of the Old Testament. Number 10, New Testament redefinition. Jesus redefines Israel. We need to understand that stuff. By the way, so does Paul, so do others in the New Testament. We'll get really deep into that. Number 11, early Christianity. So after Jesus, in other words, after the cross, you have early Christianity and you have a decentralized people that is very different from what Christianity looks like today. We will look at that. And finally, in the last unit, we have to ask, what is the point of churches in this world? And how can churches actually live up to that purpose? So now you have the provisional program. And if you sign up this week by Friday, that's February the 27th, you'll get a digital invitation for Saturday the 28th, also this week. And you can participate in a live meeting of about an hour or an hour and a half on Saturday, where we refine the program. I want to make sure that you co-create with me. That's when you can suggest to me how the program should be expanded, contracted, or whatever changes we need to make. But hopefully this is enough to give you an idea of what we're going to do. You saw in my list that towards the end of it there was a focus on the Bible, and that will actually be the main emphasis of this course. I also want you to remember we will do communal things together. It's not just you watching lectures in any of these units, but us working on them together, talking together, impacting each other, making friendships, and being able to help others understand these issues, others who are actually willing to understand, not the fundamentalists, but the ones with an open mind. So here's another reason why you want to sign up this week. At the moment it costs a third of what it will cost eventually. I don't know when eventually is, it depends on the response, but it could be as early as next week. So my 2 reasons for you can come to this meeting on Saturday and help me co-create the course, refine it, and secondly, you're getting 2/3 off if you sign up before then. Please make sure you go back to that other video, the one right before this, the one that you were probably never shown yesterday. That's where you find all the details. I can't repeat the details here because if I do, this video will also go nowhere. So please watch the other video, the one in front of this one. See you there.